I think it's important that we sit down with our kids and we find out what their needs are the most. I never forget having this difficult conversation with my son, Ethan. So if Ethan's out there listening, he'll probably say, I don't remember telling my dad that because I think he just forgot or repressed some of the hard times. Or maybe God's just given me some grace in this. But I'll never forget planting the church. We're meeting in a building that we have to set up and break down. So you're having all these conversations afterwards. Hey, next week we need to do this. Next week we need to do that. And I'm having these conversations on the phone as I'm driving home with Ethan in the back seat. And I'm just trying to do the church work because we're not going to have a staff meeting. We're all doing other jobs. So this is our only time to have the conversation. So I finished the conversation with this gentleman that we were planting the church with. And I said goodbye. And I'll never forget, I was stopped on the interstate, turning on a road called Jedburgh Road, which is what we lived off of. And I'll never forget my son saying, Dad, why do you like talking to everybody else more than you like talking to me?
Oh.
That was a crushing moment because I didn't see myself that way.
Yeah.
I didn't think that was what his experience was, but it snapped me to reality. It snapped me back to this. God's given me a chance to understand my kid's heart, and he just needs me to have conversations with them.
Yeah.
Welcome to the GC Collective podcast, brought to you by the California Southern Baptist Convention. From local missions to global impact, we explore the vision, passion, and heart behind our collective movement in California and around the world. Where better together isn't just a motto, it's how we maximize our impact in fulfilling the Great Commission.
Hello, California Southern Baptist family. Welcome back to the GC Collective podcast. We have a really interesting topic today. It's definitely a departure from what we've normally done. I am here at the table sitting with Will Browning. Welcome back again.
Thank you for having me.
Send Network California Director, new local church pastor here in California. And we have invited your gorgeous wife. What's her name? Introduce her to us.
Well, this is Tarah Browning. We've been married for 25 years. We have 3 kids and 2 grandchildren,
We do.
Gabriel and baby Bo.
It's weird that you guys are grandparents. We are the same age. You're just so dewy and beautiful.
Oh, that is so
fashionable.
thoughtful. That is, praise God for lip gloss.
I know. You're one of my favorites. So welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's fun to have another girl here.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah. So
We'll see how it goes, and then you'll have to decide if you're thankful at the end.
Oh, no, I already know this is going to be great. Poor Will. Here with the 2 gals. It's going to be great. Before we get to the topic of the day, we always try to highlight some good work that is happening or happens across our convention. And we don't get to talk about the ministry to women very often. And so I want to capitalize on that while you're here, because I feel like NAM, Send Network, you guys have really come to step up and shepherd women leaders. Tell us a little bit about what's happening here in California, how you tend to pastors' wives and other women.
Well, I get the great privilege of caring for church planter wives. I feel very protective of this group. I was a church planter wife, and it's a unique population. They're women who are walking through, almost think of it as a new business starting. And so they are coming alongside of their husbands planting a new church, typically also working another job, typically caring for young children, and just a lot of things happening at once. And one of the great privileges of my job is to offer them care and support through an annual getaway. And we've just finished our LA and San Diego getaway for church planter wives. Some of our Central Valley wives get to participate as well. And really, our goal those 3 days is that they leave feeling cared for and seen and spoiled.
Yeah.
And so we had a wonderful time together. There's always lots of laughter.
Yeah.
Worship, prayer, new friendships made. I leave feeling refueled to care for the women for another year. And they get to walk away feeling rejuvenated about their church plant and loving their husbands and loving their families. And it was a successful time.
Yeah, I have a real appreciation for the struggle of the pastor, because there's not another person he can really go to in the congregation. and probably even more so for the pastor's wife. Who is she commiserating with? Who is she, unburdening to? And those are hard situations to be in, especially for the pastor's wife. Planter probably even more so.
Agree.
Yeah.
Our hope at these retreats, what we've seen every year is that women walk away connected to other church planter wives in their region.
Right. Yes.
So it's someone they can not only call, but they could meet for coffee. And they could support their kids at a sporting event and just be friends with them.
Yeah.
And we've seen it bring life.
Yeah. I love it. I'm so glad you guys are doing that. And you guys do it every year, right?
We do.
Yeah.
It's a gift.
That's really great. Well, we are here today because one of the things that I get to see in my role as the communications director at the convention is we put out our Tuesday newsletter. If you have not subscribed, please do so. Have to do that plug all the time. But I get to look back and see what are our people clicking on, what is resonating with our churches here in the West Coast. And I found something very interesting that, as always, disaster relief hits high for our people. They love the stories. They'll click on everything, and we expect that. And then I would expect, evangelism to come in second, or I would expect something like church compliance help to come in second. That's what I would have thought. But actually this year, far above anything else was healthy family resources. And I thought, wow, this is really telling about what our church leaders are looking for right now. And I can't say for sure if it's because of them as pastors and their families, or if they're looking for resources for their congregation. And so when you two were in the building, I thought, let's get this married couple who has kind of waded some of these waters and have coached people through some of the stuff, and just have a dialogue about how the church can best minister to each unique role of the family, the father who's the pastor, and the wife who's supporting, and the children who are coming alongside. And so, Will, let's just start with you. If there was something that you could say that you see right now that's happening in the lives of our pastors that maybe churches should be aware of, how can a church step up and rally around their pastor as they give leadership in this very unique context?
Well, the generation before was taught a lie that if you take care of your church, then God will take care of your family.
The pastor. Yeah.
The pastor. And nowhere do we see that in Scripture. I think it was probably something that we picked up from just guilt, hope. Maybe things are better than they are. But the truth is that was a bad strategy. What we really need to recognize is the only way that we're going to have a healthy church is if we have a healthy pastor. And the only way we're going to have a healthy pastor is if his home is healthy. So it's critical that we recognize for church members that are out there that they want desperately to have a pastor's home that's healthy. One of the reasons why I think it's so good for our local church is when you have a healthy home that is leading your church, then everyone benefits from drinking from that well of knowledge. But many times pastors just don't feel like they have the room to be normal. They don't feel like their kids have a chance to make mistakes like everybody else makes mistakes.
Right.
And it seems like one quick comment in front of a group of people might make everybody fearful that, there's a bad relationship at home. So many times pastors are on guard because they're scared that if they say the wrong thing, they do the wrong thing, they have a bad moment, that their job is on the line. The truth is, this is creating a lack of transparency. It's creating a lack of authenticity. And these are all things that this generation and most churches really, really want to see in their pastor. So there almost has to be a culture that is created from the local church people to ensure that the pastor and his family can be healthy, and that they can be authentic, and they can be transparent, and that they will be loved even if it seems like they're in a bad moment.
Yeah.
They get a chance to make mistakes as well. And this is where we see the shepherding relationship, not only that a pastor is a shepherd to his congregation, but in many ways, the congregation is seeking to shepherd their pastor and his family as well.
So if most of our listeners are church leaders, they're probably, I can imagine many are saying yay and amen. how do we teach that to the congregation when the pastor's, it seems like a sticky wicket?
Well, I think we're all trying to discover that. There's so many great congregations that are out there that are doing it really, really well, but you don't often hear the stories of success. You only hear the stories of failure, or the tough stories. The truth is, most Southern Baptists out in our congregations, they truly do love their pastor. They truly do love their pastor's wife and his family, and they want to do what they can to support. But often it's like, what do we do? How do we do that? Well, number one, praying is always significant. Now, that sounds like a very general church answer, but the truth is, everything that God is doing, he's doing first because somebody prayed for it. So if a kid is going to come to Christ, if a kid's going to succeed, if a marriage is going to be healthy, it's going to be first because somebody decided to pray for that. So I would say, number one, pray. Number two, do what you can to let them live a normal life. Meaning,
when you say they, them, you're saying the pastor, let their family live a normal life?
Yeah, let the pastor's family live a normal life. Like, there's baseball games to go to, and there are vacations to go on. And a lot of some of the biggest sadnesses that pastor kids feel is that they got to miss out on that. One of my favorite stories, I heard a pastor's kid tell the story about his dad. He said it was a Wednesday night prayer meeting, and he was sitting on the back row, which he had to do as the only kid in the whole service. But that was part of being the pastor's kid. There was going to be a missionary who was speaking that day, so his dad introduced the missionary, and he started to settle back into the back row, thinking to myself, another Wednesday like this. I want to have his dad come up behind him and whisper in the back of his ear, "You want to ditch this place and let's go get ice cream and go to the beach?" And he said, it's the most memorable and loving moment I had with my dad, because my dad showed me on one day that I was more important than the ministry. Now, he said, I know he probably set it up with the minister or the missionary and said, I'm going to have to leave early. I need to invest some time in my son. But he could only do that because he had a church that would understand. So if you're a church leader out there and you're willing to create those types of environment, get ready to have a pastor for 25 years. Because you just want to have a church that thinks of you that way.
I think pastors can help create this culture by just being authentic when they speak about their family. That fear, that sharing what's really happening may cause unrest in a congregation, keeps a pastor from really just saying, hey, this week we had a tough week with our kids. Would you be praying for us? And Will and I have found that more consistently, people are encouraged by the difficult things we walk through more than they're encouraged by us sharing our triumphs.
That makes sense.
So
right?
They want to hear, oh, this is a normal family and they're struggling to be parents just like I am. Okay, that actually makes this pastor and his family much more real and authentic to me. And it becomes a teaching moment. Our family was struggling, and here's how we responded rather than hiding away. So they can create that culture of authenticity. And it gives church members permission to also say, hey, we're struggling.
It's a real healthy modeling, right? And to presume that the pastor, regardless of his age, has it all put together, and everyone's striving to be like that family somehow, is disingenuous on so many levels. And I think might rob some older couples their opportunity to pour into the pastor and say, I have been there. I have walked through this. I'm on the other side of it now. So that's a really good word. Let me ask you a question I've always wondered, and I've talked to different pastors about it. The role of the pastor and the pastor's wife, right? The pastor knows a lot. He's in a lot of conversations, and there's this moment where, when do I bring my wife into that? What do I protect her from knowing? When am I keeping her, at distance from my ministry? Have you guys found a balance there as a husband and wife? You have a formula?
Well, I always have a formula. I have a talking point.
I'm sure there's a spreadsheet somewhere.
So one of the things we recognize is every minister is different and every pastor's wife is different.
Right.
But I think there's something of a scale. So if you could think of two polars, on one side of that polar is what I call an advisor. And this is a spouse who really is the pastor's go-to ear for every decision they need to make. That's a polar side. One other side on the opposite is the lioness. The lioness is the one who sees her responsibility as protection.
Mm-hmm.
And truthfully, you need to know where your spouse is on that spectrum. If they're really close to being a lioness, meaning they feel like their responsibility is to protect the family and to protect you, then sharing information may need to come at a guarded level based on where that protection needs to be. On the other side, there's a lot of spouses who they're married to a guy who needs to process out loud, and they are the type of person they share every single thing with. The problem is, depending on who you are as a pastor's wife, you're either going to live without all the information, which is a challenge, or you're going to live with all the information, which is a challenge.
Yes.
So I think what a pastor has to do is understand his wife and where she is on that spectrum. If she is more of a lioness, then there might be less information that she needs because that information is going to hurt her heart for the congregation. But on the other side, I don't want to strip it from someone who really, really needs that advisor. So I think Tarah would say that she's on that spectrum at a certain point.
I was going to ask, Tarah.
Big surprise. I'm a lioness. And I love how Will says using discernment if your wife is a lioness. And we want to stress the difference between discernment and secrecy. So Will did a great job of not keeping secrets from me, but knowing what details are necessary for Tarah to know and what really isn't necessary and is only going to be a stumbling block to her. I wanted to be able to go to church and still love the people that I saw.
Right.
And to just see them with grace. And Will did he does a great job of just allowing me to be his teammate, but also knowing, hey, this isn't necessary. Still being very truthful and transparent so that he's maintaining trust. I still feel a part of ministry. I still feel like I can champion what's happening and I can pray specifically for needs. But I have other friends who are pastors' wives, and they know everything because their husband really has to process everything out loud and with them. And they're able to handle that.
Yeah.
I'm just not that mature. I have a lot of growth. Sanctification is still very much in the works.
Well, I think lioness is a strength. It's just,
She's being a little self-effacing. I think that no matter which one of these you are, you're just going to know who you are.
Right.
And then lean into that. And it's to determine who you are and also to understand what the pastor needs. So neither one of these are good or bad. It's just knowing where you sit on that spectrum and then making sure that the pastor's wife gets to be who she is.
Right. She has a role and she has a gifting. And so we want to make sure that that pastor's wife's in that sweet spot. Yeah. Tarah, let me ask you, I'm sure you've heard of the pastor's wife who's really feeling burdened. Maybe she feels like her husband's being abused, overworked, whatever, but isn't in a situation where she can either speak up or even advocate. What do you tell that wife when she's bitterness is starting to settle in?
One of the first areas we always speak, Will and I, to ministry couples is the health of their marriage. So kind of starting back with, okay, you are seeing and observing this situation with your husband and his church, your church. Let's step back. Where's your marriage? How can we kind of do a barometer on the health of that situation? And if I can speak from my own experiences, sometimes when I've observed what seemed to be unhealthy, it was coming out of maybe some bitterness I had in my heart just as a wife. Maybe some neglect I felt that my husband had been spending too much time with the church, spending too much time with ministry. And so my perception of what was happening at church was not accurate. Now, sometimes there could be some definite abuse of time,
Yeah.
overworking, not respecting a pastor's boundary with his family.
Yeah.
For me, I had to adjust some of my perspective. Things I had taken personally that maybe I felt like were offenses against me. For me to just have a great conversation with Will, for us to get back on the same page.
Yeah.
So first of all, I would tell that wife, let's start with a conversation with your husband.
Yeah.
Sharing your heart. What are you feeling? Have you been his teammate in this, or are you resenting his work of ministry? Have you come alongside of him? If you have, where are some areas that he has not drawn boundaries? And you can just share your heart and your hopes for where you want your family to be.
Yeah.
And how you want your family to finish strong. Will, what else would you add?
Well, I think that pastors have the most typical affair that they have is with God's bride.
Mm.
So if we're seeking to find our pleasure, we're seeking to find our acclamation, we're seeking to find our joy
Mm-hmm.
from the church, rather than trying to seek it from our actual wife, then what happens is it feels like the attention that's being given to the church is actually cheating on the family.
Wow.
And I think pastors have to be very, very careful to know that you can cloak it in spiritual talk, but the truth is your first ministry has to be to your family. And Tarah is kindly telling, stories that are very, very real for us.
Mm-hmm.
So about 4 years into our ministry in South Carolina, I thought we were doing great. I thought that we were just crushing it as a family. We had 3 kids come in 6 months. A month later, we planted a church. I was working
Wow.
2 jobs. I was living my dream.
Yeah.
I thought this is exactly what we're called for, and I thought Tarah was enjoying it just as much as I did. And we had a very frank conversation where she just said, the way that things are going is not good. And I'll tell you, I had no idea.
Wow.
I thought things were great,
Mm-hmm.
but there was no real place for her to say, I don't feel seen.
Mm.
I feel like your best energy is going outside of the home, and there's very, very little creativity and love to give inside the home. So it was a wake-up call for me early on in ministry. And there's probably some pastors' wives who feel that right now. They'll hear this on the podcast and think, how do I ever bring that up?
Yeah.
Because I feel exactly like that. I feel like all of his best attention goes to God's bride, not to me as his bride. And maybe this is just an opportunity for you to hear on this podcast that if you can go to him gently and with love and make sure that you're saying, I just want more of you.
Yeah.
I want the best of you, and I want our family to experience the best of you. Maybe the whole purpose for you listening to this podcast is to get courage to have that conversation, but to do it in a loving manner, because honestly, Tarah did it in a loving manner, and it changed our whole marriage.
Wow.
We speak at marriage conferences now because of those honest conversations that then changed our marriage. And now, just like Tarah said, people don't care about your expertise. They care about your experience. They are drawn to you because you've experienced what they've experienced. So if you're a pastor's wife out there and you felt that way, have a loving, kind conversation where he knows that what you're saying is, I just want more of you, and I want our family to experience more of you. He'll be loved by that.
Yeah.
We both decided that we wanted to finish ministry without moral failure and successfully. We wanted to honor God until he called us home. So we were at least starting with that. In that moment of chaos in our marriage, we were unified in the fact that we loved the Lord. We both loved his bride, but we loved this gift of marriage the most and wanted to finish well. So how could we get back on the same page? And I can't stress enough, ladies, when you're speaking to your man, do so with a safe, face, a safe body language and posture, I can like stab Will with my eyeballs.
You're from Miami, we know.
Yes,
Yeah.
fire comes out of my face. So, and by the grace of God, Will was able to hear those things in a gentle way and really just a broken posture of, I miss you. I miss us.
Yeah.
And I love our church too. But let's love us first.
Yeah.
You know, and it really was a pivotal moment.
Yeah. And one other thing I would say to the pastors that are out there. So think about how much time you put into a sermon. Think about how much creativity you put into a sermon. Many of us are practicing exactly what we're going to say because we want to say it just right. Many of us are going on the internet to research and to try to figure out the best exact thing. You know what a wife wants sometimes? Will you put a little bit of that creativity into our marriage?
Yeah.
What about if you put one sermon's worth of creativity into a date night?
Yeah.
Or into one of our nights away?
Yeah.
So, gentlemen, you already have it in you to be very, very creative and to think of wise ways of saying things. And what if you took some of that natural passion and energy and said, this was not going to go to a sermon illustration. This one's going to go to a date night or a moment with my wife. You've already got it in you. It's just putting it in that place.
So I think most of our listeners actually are men, a very small percentage, though I hope this gets shared a lot. What would you say to the pastors who are listening? Is there something they should ask their wives while they're sitting here thinking, I wonder if maybe I haven't given her an open door? What would be a good starting question?
Okay, this is a lot of fun because the conversation that we've just begun to talk about, one that happened for us, decades ago.
Yeah.
It started with me saying, I've got a notebook and I've written down questions and I'm just going to ask you questions and take notes. My commitment to Tarah was that I was not going to respond to her when I asked her these questions. I was just going to listen. Now, I thought when I said, how are we doing? She's going to say, you're the best husband ever.
He picked up dessert that night, brought it home. I think he thought this is going to end in a cuddle session.
So I asked the first question. I think it was something to the like, how are you doing? And it was, I'm not doing well, and I'm not sure if we're going to make it. And I've committed to not saying anything. So I'm like, is there anything more you want to say before I move on to the next question?
I just said it. It's not, things aren't going well. Write that down in your book.
So here's what I would say to the pastor who's trying to figure out. Write down 5 questions.
Did you even get to question 2?
Yeah, we got through.
Okay.
We got through them. But if you wrote down 5 questions, I can give you a few of them. And just said, I just want to sit and listen and take notes. And do that. Don't rebuttal.
Yeah.
Don't feel like you've got to defend yourself.
Yeah.
Just listen. I think some of the questions that we asked was, how are you feeling about ministry?
Yeah.
Are you being fulfilled in your ministry? Do you feel supported by me? Are there things that I could be doing to make your ministry a primary part of our lives?
Yeah.
Is there anything that I need to know about our children that I don't yet know that you haven't felt comfortable yet sharing?
Yeah.
Sometimes our kids are going through things and a pastor's wife's just trying to figure out, when do I give him this information? So those simple kind of questions can allow for there to be a safe space. Bring a notebook, write your questions down, take notes, and listen. And if Tarah and I have anything that we've have to share when it comes to success in our marriage and ministry, it all goes back to a conversation just like that one.
Wow. And the questions just didn't seem very hard either. Just open the door. Let me pivot a little bit to children. I was telling you guys earlier, and most people know, I was in ministry for a very long time, high profile ministry position at a fairly large church. And I think I lived in that space where I really felt a great sense of purpose there at the church. And of course, people know I have a traumatic divorce story that my children also walked through. But one of my kids will still say to this day, that I walked through this traumatic divorce. Father left our home, and if I went to therapy today, it would be because I was a staff kid at a church. The trauma there was significant and long-lasting. And so what are some ways in which church leaders can be protecting, preserving, upholding their children? Because that is a unique calling as well, and we don't want to forget the most vulnerable.
Well, the first thing I want to do is remind pastors and their families that their kids' failures do not represent their efforts when it comes to what they've done as a parent. And I'll tell you why I believe this is true. God had his first two children, Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
They were being raised in a perfect environment where there was no sin. And he was the perfect father. And yet his children still rebelled.
Yeah.
How can you expect that you're going to do better than God when you're not raising your kids as a perfect parent? And they're certainly not in a perfect world.
Yeah.
So our kids are going to struggle just like everybody else's kids, and your value, just like God's value, is not defined by how obedient his children are. Actually, he is more valuable because of the way he loves the sinner, and he gets greater glory from that than our simple obedience. So if you are facing struggles out there, understand God can relate because he knows exactly what that feels like to have rebelling kids. But I do think that there's some things that we can do. I think number one, we've got to make sure that they are priorities, and we need to understand what are their priorities. For some kids, it might be being at their sports games.
Yeah.
For others, that might not be it.
Yeah.
For some, it might be, I just need some time with you that's just one-on-one. For others, it might be family time. So you got to know your kid. And guess what? Everyone that you have is different, and they need to be loved differently.
Yeah.
So those are some things that I know that we experienced.
We also came to learn very quickly that our kids didn't need to be at church as much as we were there.
Oh, wow.
Imagine that. So
Yeah.
if we had 3 services, I didn't need to assume that my kids needed to be at 3 services. An example of that, I was leading worship on the first Sunday of every month. I was in charge of the team. And at one point, our church plant had 4 services on a Sunday. And I just could see that my kids were worn down. I didn't think it was fruitful for them to be there at 7 a.m. when I needed to be there for rehearsal and then not leave until 7 p.m. at night. So we partnered with an older couple in our church that loved our kids. And one Sunday a month, they hung out with Miss Nora and her husband, and they made chocolate chip pancakes and they played basketball, and then they'd come to one of the services.
Yeah.
And it was such a gift to our family, but it was a gift to that family.
Yes.
And our kids still talk about like those Sundays at Miss Nora's house. Really, I guess the enemy might trick us into believing that our kids should be at every service with us. And if they're sleeping on the front row, then so be it. But they've got to learn to commit and serve.
Yeah, right.
They haven't even gone through puberty, let alone been called into ministry.
Right.
And here we've given them this boulder to carry that they're not meant to carry. So find ways that your child can be at church and serve if they love serving in something. I know now our son is in college, but when he's home for the weekend, he wants to go and just serve with his dad. He wants to be with Will.
Yeah.
And if that means, okay, I'm looking over my sermon at 6 a.m., okay, I'm going to be with you at the coffee shop.
Wow.
Yeah, the moment you create a little bit of the distance, then they want to lean back in and have a little bit more.
Yeah.
And we watched that. We watched that with our kids to kind of lean back in. I think one of the things that we did that was always fun is if we had a long night of ministry, then it always ended at Waffle House.
Amen.
Now, that's
you
a
guys
Southern
don't know.
thing. So it might be
I
like
love Waffle House.
it might be like IHOP.
IHOP, maybe.
But I remember we'd say,
Not as
all right,
good.
kids, we got a long night tonight. And they would say, are we going to Waffle House tonight? And at the end of any big event, you're looking around, everybody's finished it up. And it's like, who wants to go to Waffle House? And it's all the fun people who want to go. So they just love the chance for us to have that. And those are just some fun moments, even when we're going further than they needed to go. Just to know at the end of it, there was a memory that was going to be made.
Yeah.
And I took Jed, our youngest, back to a big meeting. And at the end of it, he just said, are we going to end at Waffle House together? I'm like, yes, we are, buddy. Yes, we are.
It's God's food. It's wonderful.
It's such a small thing, but it's so big.
Good memories.
Yeah. Wow, this idea that the kids don't have to be at church all the time, why does that feel so revolutionary to me right now? And why did no one tell me that when my kids were little?
It probably came out of a moment of desperation for me in that difficult season of church planting when we had 3 young children. And I was trying to be the worship leader and the church planter wife. And so probably some of it was selfish, like, hey, you're going to go to so-and-so's house.
Yeah.
But man, what a blessing for them, for that family that partnered with us.
Yeah.
If you're a layperson listening to this, like, you're a pastor's wife, and she would just appreciate encouragement and support. And you just saying, hey, you're doing a great job as a mom. Because everybody else is probably telling her that, like, her kid bit someone in nursery and, like, they're the troubled kid.
Yeah.
So that family was a blessing to us. So they encouraged us and said, yeah, we want to stand in the gap with you.
Yeah.
They were doing ministry. They weren't on campus, but they were doing ministry.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, man, we hit some really heavy stuff, you guys, here. And so I'm so grateful for you coming and really sharing some of the raw parts of your own ministry and marriage as you walked to this point now. We could probably do 5 more of these, quite frankly. So don't be surprised if I pull you back in here again on another day for part 2. But if you had kind of a last word for pastors as they consider keeping their healthy, protected, and valued, what would you say? And then Tara, I'll ask you the same thing about the wife and the mother. What is the one last word you want to leave with them?
Well, I would say there will probably be 5 people around your bed the day that you pass from earth to eternity. More than likely, those 5 people are going to be people who carry your last name or have carried your last name, daughter, son, wife, in-laws. Work towards that day, that the people who want to be there on your last day are the people that have your name. It's your family. Don't let the people who respect you the most be the people that are furthest from you. Let the people who respect you the most be the people who are closest to you.
That's a good word.
I've just been so grateful that in any season of ministry, that Will has made the commitment. He makes this statement to me, I want you to come to the end of your life, Tara, and say, no man could have loved me better than Will Browning.
Yeah.
And to say that with confidence and boldness, that the life we live, that I felt loved and cared for by Will, more so than the church, and that our relationship was a priority. And I felt valued by him. And I do feel like no man could love me better than Will Browning.
So if I pass away and Tara remarries, I want you to listen to this podcast, sir.
No man.
I think now's the time to pull out your notepad and ask the question. How are we doing, Tara?
Part 2.
What about a word to pastors' wives who may be feeling like they're going to need to approach their husband? What would be your word of encouragement?
Number 1, know that your role as pastor's wife is one of the most important roles.
Yeah.
To shepherd the heart of the shepherd.
Yes.
And to not grow weary, because the enemy wants us to quit because he realizes the importance of a pastor being healthy. Don't lose heart. Reach out to another pastor's wife if you need to. Share with your husband. Have that conversation.
Yeah.
But know that the role you play, see it as a gift that it's not a burden to stand with your husband and care for this body of believers. It is a great privilege, and that God has you in a specific place with a specific group of people that no one else can care for in the way that you can.
Yeah.
What a gift that is. That's a great privilege. But it's okay also to say, I'm struggling.
Yeah.
So be willing to be transparent with someone. Don't hide that away.
Yeah.
It's not going to bring healing to pretend. We know that the Lord brings healing when things are in the light. So if you're struggling, be honest with someone. Find a safe place to share. And that hopefully will start with sharing with your husband.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really great. Well, this was so heavy that I feel a little weird, but we're going to do it anyway. It is funny story time.
Oh, wow. Let's do it.
End every podcast with a funny story. Well,
Well, I know that the last podcast I was on, I told a story about golf.
Yes.
And how I had hit a ball between my legs somehow playing golf.
In an interview, I felt like.
In an interview, in a post-interview golf match. Thanks, Pastor Jimmy Hamp out there. But another fun golf story that I was thinking about is the time that I brought Tarah with me to play golf.
Okay.
Now, she didn't want to play. She just wanted to be there with me. She was just like, can I go with you?
I'm from a football family. Okay. I have no golf background. Let's just lay some groundwork here.
So she decided she's going to be the cart driver. She's going to drive the cart.
Okay.
So I'm like, that's awesome. So, I hit the first ball off the tee, this time not between my legs, this time normally trying to impress my wife. And, it's like, all right, now we're going to drive to the middle and I'm going to try to get it up onto the green. So then I hit the ball, it goes up onto the green, and I grab my putter and I go walk up to go putt. And I'm lining up to putt, and I hear Tara's voice say, knock it in, baby. But it was way too close. She had driven the golf cart up onto the green that she was right beside me.
I didn't know you couldn't. Apparently, you're not supposed to drive a golf cart on the green.
Wow, that doesn't sound right.
They're a little protective of those things.
Let's just say I was the best wife that day. No one else was willing to take that kind of risk to cheer on their man.
She was supportive.
How'd that conversation go, honey?
Yeah, we were really, really young in marriage then. I don't know if I had the right words then.
I'm sure you didn't rebuke me.
It was probably something like, bless your heart.
Bless your heart.
That's true. You would have been in the South.
Yeah.
I probably did not golf with you ever again either. So,
wow, you guys are so cute. And she was so encouraging, too, with her, you can do it.
Knock it in.
That's so funny. So all pastors' wives, now they know when they go with their husband.
Do not drive the golf cart on the green. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay.
You guys, thank you so much for being here. I am going to have you back again. Mark my words for a part 2.
Well, this was great. And let me say happy 4th of July to everybody. Thank you for getting to do this summertime with us.
Yeah, nice balmy California summer. They're the best. We have an email address, podcast@csbc.com. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye.